Good evening. I would like to call to order the Tuesday, September 7th, 2021 regular meeting of the Hendry County School Board. If so led, please stand and join us in the invocation followed by the pledge. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and glory forever. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Superintendent, at this time, do you have any presentations?
We do have a presentation. We have a great group of leaders that is going to talk to us about some research and some scores. On the agenda it says third grade reading scores. However, they've expanded that to include much more information and data to keep the board informed and updated. And I believe Ms. Holt is going to kick it off for us.
Yes. Okay, so it was requested to have the third grade data, but we thought we would include more than that up through high school, and not just this past year data, because the bigger picture, I think, lies in historical data along with last year's data, so that you can see the impact of students being out of school so much, in my opinion, and maybe what COVID has led to our testing scores. So we'll start with reading, and if you look at the chart, in the columns at the top, we have third grade going down from 14-15 when we started FSA until the most recent data. And remember that we skipped a year due to being out for COVID in 1920. And then you go across, we have fourth grade all the way through 10th grade. And so the numbers represent the number of students, or the percentage of students proficient in reading for this one. So proficient means they scored a level 3, 4, or 5 on their their FSA. I have iReady on the brain right now. So if we look at third grade, 14-15, they were 47% proficient. And then if you look at where we are this past year, we had 37% proficient in reading. So if we look at the columns right here, we start with 14-15. The black represents the most current testing score for third grade. And we have fourth grade, fifth grade, on up to 10th grade. So I'll give you just a few minutes to look at that information.
Ms. Holt, you're seeing in 6th grade, you actually had a bump up from 18-19, and also in 7th grade and 8th grade. And they held the same in 10th grade.
Yes.
What do you attribute that to?
Well, I was looking at, if we want to break it down by school, if you want to look at it like that. So for middle school, in 6th grade, LMS was at 36% proficient, CMS was at 40. 7th grade, LMS 37, CMS 46. And then 8th grade, LMS was 39, CMS was 42. And if you look at the difference, they were both very close in the percentages. I know I can speak for Clewiston Middle School because I was part of that coaching team a couple years ago. They worked really hard to get intensive reading groups put in place at that time. I don't know if that's attributed to the increase because they carried it through this past year as well. Clewiston Middle School did.
A lot of extra resources, I think, gone through the Unassigned funds being provided and so forth.
Yeah, so, Clewiston Middle School has really gotten a lot of support over the last couple of years. But I think, to answer your question, it really is true to the hard work that teachers put in to make sure that they are teaching those standards to the best of their abilities, and the hard work that our school leaders are doing, and the hard work that students are doing. Because even with all the monumental challenges that we had last year with COVID, you still see that the data at least maintained, and we tested a high percentage of kids at each one of those schools. So,
Yeah, there's a huge difference between their 14, 15 years and this year. And it's, I think historically the data has always been, they were typically higher performing in the elementary schools and dipped when they got, hit 6th grade. And so, that's, I like to see bucking that trend.
Yeah, and holding the students accountable. I know both schools did a lot of data chats with the students. So, are we good? Okay, so then we look at, I hate to bring this up, but if we look at our level ones, our students scoring a level 1, which obviously is the lowest if not proficient. Same thing, we have our 3rd grade all the way to 10th grade. And then we can see the historical data on that. So obviously we do not want these bars to rise in that respect. So we've got our work cut out for us this year.
That large jump from that 25 to the 33, we really feel like there's a lot of impact from COVID, being out of school, and that piece.
Would I be premature in asking what are we doing differently to change that data set, or is that like further on into the presentation?
I will say, across the board, new curriculum, being cohesive across the district. I will say in the past, it was hit and miss and spotty amongst the different schools. I'm hoping that makes a difference. Schools have really pushed for those intensive groups. We have our MTSS coordinators in place at every school, and they have been really hitting those lower scoring students to get them on track.
Have we been investing a lot in like teacher training? Because I know we have a very young staff. I think the last time I got a breakdown, we were over 50% of our staff was 0 to 3 years of experience.
A lot of career changers.
A lot of career changers, and so, getting ahead of myself here, I was, when I was looking at the budget, I just didn't see the investment in training that I thought that I would be seeing. And so, I'm wondering if that's something we're doing, or we're just relying on the curriculum. And did we have different curriculums? Were they using different curriculums before in different schools?
Before they were using a set of curriculum, but not everyone was consistently using it the same pacing guide or necessarily using it the way it was intended to be used. Some of the things that Mr. Sanchez and I spoke with you about on our presentation comes some parallels right with this. So we have multiple sessions, the first one coming up September 15th with the coaches and a mapping team where we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about with the curriculum we've initiated so far, what's went well, what hasn't went well, what do we need to change moving forward. So it's a consistent process that we have moving forward, 6 scheduled meetings already. And the goal is that each school stays within 1 week of each other. So we're using the power of our minds together collaboratively, building that cohesiveness across all of the schools to really build on that power. As far as professional development, we are doing professional development. We're meeting with our curriculum person on Friday of this week to talk about even more curriculum training. But I think a lot of that comes back to job embedded trainings with our coaches as well. We've really had some tough conversations on what the coaching model needs to look like at all of the schools and what the follow-up and implementation is going to be looking like at all of the schools. And so you mentioned the career changers and things like that. We actually had a meeting last week with Westside, for example, to really talk about how we can focus in on those certain teachers that are career changers and how the coaches can further support them in their specific needs as well. So I think we are hitting all of those topics and having some good conversations to drive that forward.
And we started some of that with the pre-week training. We had phonics training for the K-1 teachers. We had Max Scholar for all teachers, K-12. iReady, you name it. had several opportunities for teachers to attend that. And then that once a month half day for teachers, they have already, the first one we had last month, I know a lot of schools really sat down and they dug into their data to work on making those intensive reading groups. And so that part, they did as a collaborative effort, and then each half day is something, each month is something new to train those teachers and hopefully.
Do you anticipate kind of a learning curve with implementing a new curriculum?
Absolutely. How can you not?
Well, I mean,
All new curriculum
And new standards, I mean, that's a huge piece too, is we have
yeah.
new standards that we're implementing as well.
so to help me manage my expectations, because I know they're always up here, to be realistic and going forward, can we expect improvement from this set of data, our most current set of data? Or are we realistically, expecting maybe some stagnation as everybody's getting acclimated?
I can answer that. You can expect improvement.
We're working very hard on that improvement. Everyone is putting in blood, sweat, and tears for that. And
Keep everybody healthy and in school and.
Well, and that's the nail on the head. With the new curriculum, with the new pacing, with the new cohesion that's happening district-wide, with the new expectations, and all the auxiliary things that are happening that they're really not talking a lot about, footsteps of brilliance, the potential of literacy buzz, and all the things that we're doing for outreach. The biggest thing that you had here was a large chunk of our students were not there in school through December. At the end of school last year, we still had 500 students that never stepped foot into a school, that yet we had to test and run through the FSAs, the same as normal. We are now on a level playing field. The expectation is we will improve no matter what. However, we are now seeing large swaths of healthy kids getting quarantined that are not in school for several days at a time. We're seeing kids with COVID. And so that is going to be the variable that's going to throw the kink into the plan. We feel like that our system is better, our curriculum is better, our pacing is better. However, the child with the student is not that much better at this point in time.
We have a pretty sizable number of quarantined.
Yep.
Yes.
If you look at, back-to-back quarantines or even 2 quarantines within a school year, you've already hit that 10% mark, which, you've got folks, that education professionals saying they're more likely to fail a course or.
That's right. And at that very, as you've seen at the third grade level, 37% proficiency is horrible. Who in here could keep their job if you're 37% proficient at anything? It's not going to happen. And so if it was a second or a third grader who missed it and they're quarantined multiple times throughout this year and they don't get it again this year, that could be, catastrophic to the development of that child for the rest of their life.
Well, just the 37% at third grade that carries a burden, because now they're switching over to reading to learn. And, I'm wondering, I've pushed back on the ELA curriculum because I just didn't think it was heavy enough with science of reading. It's just, I think that the more important than the curriculum is the instruction, and the good instruction. And even when you have and what I've learned in all my research on this, because I've had to do the research, is even the colleges of education have adopted the balanced literacy. They're not teaching the teachers. They're college of education graduates, the science of reading. And, I think we've seen that. I'm not just picking on Hendry County here. You see it across the state, you see it across the nation.
And I would echo that. I think Dr. Staley's team, MTSS and so forth, is really doing a mighty fine job coming in, and we're really trying to, with not only her team and our reading coaches as well, step up our game on that tier 1 level instruction from the foundational piece up, because if we can't do tier 1 right, then that is a problem.
So who is overseeing the progress monitoring and to ensure that these kids are on that right track, and then sit in the strike team if you've got a class that's falling behind or particular students?
I think it's
We
Rachel's.
at each school, as a building level principal, you're ultimately responsible to ensure student learning takes place but me and Ms. Duncan are overseeing those, school principals as well. All right, so we're neck and neck with them in terms of monitoring and overseeing that data as well. Okay? And it's not just about the student performance data, but it's also about classroom walkthrough data, what you're seeing when it comes to instruction in the classroom while it's happening between the teacher and the student as well.
So this is just a look at third grade versus the state. This is requested by a different party, so I just thought I'd share it with all of you as well. So you can see where Hendry County falls on students that score level 1, specifically 2, 3, 4, 5 individually, and then as a whole, proficient 3 through 5. This is the percent of students scoring at that area as compared to the state.
Why do you think we have the disparity between our students' performance and the rest of the state average?
That's a good question. I mean, yes, we're rural, we're a small area. You know, this is based on last year's data. We had kids that learned at home, didn't even have Wi-Fi. We gave them a hotspot, didn't work at home. You know, very limited access to education until they came back. I consistently, it seems like we've always been lower than the state on average. We have counties that have, and schools that have better resources than we do sometimes. We have better than some.
And
I don't know, there's a lot of factors.
When you look at all the stats and all the markers about Hendry County, there's a lot of ugly ones there. And I think from teenage pregnancy, poverty rate, unemployment, per capita income, it's all horrible. And I believe that this is where it manifests itself, and the data really shows it here as well. Because all those markers equate to everything that we're looking at. There's no excuse for 37% alone. You can excuse for that, and we're going to improve that. But I think that somewhat is an unofficial answer.
But to be a devil's advocate here, are those the results of poor academic achievement? Is the generational poverty, is the health care, the health outcomes, and the financial demographics? Is that a result of it, or is that the reason for?
I think it's a vicious cycle, yes.
Okay, we'll look at math, same thing. We only go to 8th grade with math because, you know, once they get to high school, then they take algebra, geometry, algebra 2, things like that. So just regular math stops at 8th grade. You can see what's happening with our math after a year of COVID, year and a half.
We are up for math curriculum adoption considerations this year, so that's something we will be diving deep into data and looking at future possibilities of how to move forward and closing this gap as well. And new best standards, of course, will come into play for math.
You know, math is one of those skills that, like reading builds year after year. You know how to read, you can transfer that year after year. In math, if you miss skills, it's hard to pick that up because the next grade may not teach that skill. And so a lot of these gaps that the kids have because of what they miss, I think, attributes to these lower scores. So teachers are having to work doubly hard in math as well to fill those gaps.
Do we do intensive, like remediation groups for math, or is that just a?
We do. I don't know that we do as much of it as we do for ELA, honestly. The IXL is being utilized within a lot of the schools to kind of find those gaps where they have. There are some small group instruction for their 1 hour intervention pieces, but for the most part, the first semester really is the majority of ELA.
And then this is Algebra 1 from 2014-15. I'm not sure why there was no data available for 10th and 11th grade at that time. I don't know if they just didn't take it or what. But as you can see. And then over here, this bottom is just the overall proficient for our district for this past year.
So when we did math mapping this summer, for example, it was really eye-opening to me coming in, because one of the things that we observed and noticed in doing some vertical planning was just the difference in vocabulary between grade level to grade level. So just a prime example, help me remember the words that they were using, Molly. There was one grade level that was saying, you don't teach angles or something. And when they got together in their vertical plan, they realized they did teach that, but they were not using the same vocabulary from grade to grade, even though the curriculum itself transitioned as well. So having that vertical planning really helped us figure out some gaps we were missing that we definitely want to move forward with identifying and pushing forward.
Is that 29, saying 29% overall?
Overall for the district.
Wow.
And typically, like when you, I don't have the numbers with me, but for 7th graders taking the Algebra 1 EOC, there weren't very many. Obviously, it's more than 10 because they wouldn't have a percentage if it was 10 or less. Because typically, Algebra 1 used to be a 9th grade test, and it's been bumped down to 8th and 7th for those students that are ready for it.
And bear in mind too, again, I'm full of excuses if you need them, and I've got them. But state and nationwide, this was also a trend, because if you struggle with reading, you know, there's either people in your home who can help you read most of the time and some of the time, but very few people can help in the home with algebra. So if you're at home from COVID distant learning and you're struggling with math, they've seen exponential lower test scores than what we did in other areas. So again, we attribute that almost entirely to the COVIDness and lack of being able to be in school.
I mean, we're moving back away. Common Core was a big thing these last few years, and some of the interesting strategies that we had for math skills and so forth that has led us to challenges with our families being able to do those skills. And the best standards reverses a lot of that. So we're very excited to move forward with the best standards in math, kind of alleviate a lot of those difficult strategies the kids and families were having with Common Core.
Which that comes about next year, K-12. And then we have geometry.
There's a failure for, I know in ELA, that affects graduation status by 10th grade. Is that the same thing with math?
So in order for you to get a high school diploma, you need to pass the Algebra 1 EOC or get a concordance score on the PSAT. All right. It used to be that you get a concordance score on the PERT. That has now gone. That ship has sailed, and that's why historically students that did not score on the Algebra 1 EOC were able to get that replacement score on the PERT. In terms of geometry, you don't need to pass the geometry EOC in order to earn a high school diploma. The only two exams that are required to pass are your 10th grade FSA and ELA and your Algebra 1 EOC. You have to pass that or get a replacement score.
You have an idea of, on the Algebra 1 EOC, how many concordance we had?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely get you that specific data if you're, but a vast majority were the concordance scores instead of the Algebra EOC.
So we had more who got the concordant than passed the algebra. Okay.
We have historically struggled with standards-based instruction in algebra and geometry. You can see the data reflects that.
Okay, we'll look at science. For science, they take it in 5th grade, and then they don't take it again until 8th grade. So these columns go horizontally, whereas you were just looking at ones that went vertically. So 5th grade will go across. This is most current. 8th grade, most current. And they always told us for science, students were tested on what they call fair game questions. So while you teach science K, let's say up to 5th grade, you teach at K5, what they were taught in 3rd grade or 4th grade may not be taught again in 5th grade, but they are expected to test on it and be successful. So 5th grade teachers not only carry the load of testing their grade level, but making sure they're ready for whatever they were supposed to have learned in K4. And then same with 8th grade.
That part again, they're tested on it, but they have been taught it the year before.
They may have been taught it the year before, but it may not carry over into the next year. So if they're in 5th grade and they take that science test, they may be tested on a skill they learned in 4th grade, but they don't, it's not in the 5th grade curriculum or standards. Yeah. And the science standards have not changed over the years. They're still next generation science standards. And then we have biology EOC for high school. Again, overall proficient for our district is 57% of students scoring level 3 through 5. And then when we look at our civics, which is typically 7th grade, and I did look at, because I was curious, because I know most students take civics in 7th grade, so I was wondering about the 8th grade. Civics, there were a handful that took it in 8th grade, but it seemed like our Florida online school had a big number of students take it in 8th grade last year, the civics exam.
Is this Hendry County or is this DAOF in here too?
Said Florida online.
Florida Online, okay.
That's DOF. It's one of the many things they've done.
So DAOF is included in this data, these data points that are being shared?
Yes.
This is gonna sound really callous and mean. And, but I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say on this one. Everybody on here was elected. I hear you, Reverend Brown. All of us up here were elected for Hendry County students. And why I can appreciate what DAOF is trying to do, I care about Hendry County kids. If we desegregated DAOF from Hendry County, would that be an improvement for ours? Or would the data look better for us?
Yeah, I think you would see an improvement.
I do as well.
All right, because I'm telling you, like, I'm on the verge of just, like, almost a panic attack looking at these numbers right now.
The the civics is going into one of the tested, FSA testing this year, correct?
Yeah, so for civics in middle school, they have to take the civics EOC as a middle schooler, and they have to earn the civics credit in order to matriculate into high school, right? You don't necessarily need to pass it in order to be promoted from middle school, but you do have to sit for it and you have to earn the credit for the civics EOC. At the high school level, we have a U.S. history EOC that you don't necessarily need to pass the U.S. history EOC to graduate, but you need to earn the U.S. history EOC credit, and that EOC is 30% of your overall grade. And then we have a new civics exam, brand new this year, 21-22, brand new for any student taking a government course in high school. They will take a civics/government exam that's new. It's going to be a first year. They don't know, they're not sure yet how that's going to affect school grades or anything like that, or if it will affect school grades. Our understanding is that they don't have to pass that new civics high school exam in order to graduate. But they do have to sit for it and they have to take it if they're taking it as part of the course.
So civics, I mean, those numbers are the least of our problems right here. Going back to the math and the reading and science, that's also DAOF in those. Oh, Lord, okay. Thank you.
They are accounted for within our state data.
They are part of our school.
Because they're accredited.
Mr. Sanchez, did I understand you correctly? You said they don't have to pass the end-of-course exams in order to, but they just have to take the class. Isn't that kind of moronic?
Yeah, so at the high school level, right? So a student will take a biology end of course exam, all right? They'll take a U.S. history end of course exam, they'll take a geometry end of course exam, and they'll take an algebra end of course exam.
Yeah.
The only one out of those four that is required to pass for graduation is the Algebra 1 USC.
What genius thought that?
The other ones basically count for 30% of your overall grade. All right, so it is factored into the credit that you have to earn for graduation, but it's not an end-all be-all like it is for the Algebra 1 USC.
Thank you.
And that's just the way the DOE has set it up. I mean, we have no control.
Wow.
And I can share that individual, like, school-based data, so it takes out the Hendry online. But just for the purpose of civics, one of our middle schools tested 276 students, and we were 51% proficient. The other middle school tested 107, and they were 92% proficient. So that's just the middle schools here.
They put a huge emphasis on civics this year and did a phenomenal job locally with it.
I mean, I care about all kids, but I really only truly love the Hendry County ones. So, yeah, I would be interested to see how our brick and mortars and the schools and under our direct control and operation.
Not a,
Yeah, none of that.
Yeah. And when I say like you'll see an improvement when we disaggregate it, like our biology scores for the Baha'i and Cluelessly were in the upper 60s versus being in the mid 50s. All right, so
I wish I'd have told me this out. I'm like, are you sweating?
And then when we talk about U.S. history, so LaBelle High School had 69% proficient, and Lewiston High School had 60% proficient this past year. If you want to look at it that way.
So you'll see that data will improve in just a second.
Those are some of the calculated on. What does that?
They have their own school. They're a separate school.
You know what Hendry Online school grade was? Did they get a school grade?
The Hendry Online, I mean, it is factored into your overall district grade, district graduation rate. It is factored. I mean, they are factored in.
So we're looking at the school grade. I don't know if there's specific school
I
grade.
don't know.
That's it.
This is where we went to get the data. If you're familiar with EdStats, you can go in there and disaggregate data individually by school and by different grade levels and all of that. That's where main reports come from.
thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. Looks like there's some work to do.
Take a breath.
Oh, my. Okay, at this time, is there any citizen comment on agenda items?
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I have talked to some people that are here tonight for citizen comment. As you see in the news, Florida is very high in the COVID count. Certain school districts have chosen to go with a mask mandate, such as Broward, Lee, Monroe, and other counties. I've had people come to me and say, what is Hendry County going to do about that? I said, well, I don't know. I don't know. I am not a medical professional. So in my due diligence, what I did is I started in LaBelle and I went to Lee Health Medical Office and I asked them their recommendations. All doctors, what is your recommendation? They recommended masks in schools. I then went in LaBelle to the Family Health Center of Southwest Florida and asked them, what is your recommendation? They said, we have so many cousins, we are so sick, you gotta wear masks. They're very clear. Then I went to Hendry Regional Care Center in LaBelle, same thing. They said, we are overwhelmed. Yes, we would recommend masks. And in Hendry County, in Lewiston, like Sunshine Family Medical Center, same recommendation. Florida Community Health Center, masks. Hendry Regional Medical Center, we have a spokesman here tonight, Dr. Forbes Medical Health Care Facility, or Dr. Forbes Family Health Care, think they need masks. But again, I am not a medical professional, so I've asked some people from our local medical providers to come and speak tonight so we could hear from them firsthand. I'm very uncomfortable making that decision. I'm not sure that any of the board members are ready to do that, so I've asked for certain people to come and speak tonight. And those are the people that will be speaking during our citizen comment. Thank you.
Mr. Timberlake, did you make the superintendent aware?
No.
Okay, thank you. All right, if you are planning to make a citizen comment tonight, if you will see, or in the back, you need to fill out like a comment card so we can have it for the record. And as you come up, if you will bring the comment card up here, we just have to have that for the record. And then wanted, if our board attorney serves as parliamentarian, and our policy is 3 minutes for each speaker. So if you wouldn't mind keeping the time.
So we have to talk that long?
I mean, you don't have to.
That's good. And we have extended other times to other people.
Thank you. So at this time, we have R.D. Williams.
I'm R.D. Williams. I'm the CEO at Hendry Regional Medical Center, and two of the other centers that were mentioned, the James D. Forbes Family Care Center and the Hendry Regional Convenient Care Center in LaBelle, are also, I guess, can be represented by my comments. I mean, our position or recommendation on this would be for this board to really go through what the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have said with regards to reopening schools to in-person learning. And they updated their information in early August, and in conclusions, where community transmission of COVID is high. And last week, the information was that Hendry County had a positive COVID testing rate of 29.5%, according to the State Department of Health. You should use layered strategies to prevent the transmission of COVID within the school system. And that includes, they've got all kinds of specific recommendations, but that includes masking, physical distancing, and screening. They note in their analysis a statewide study of Florida K through 12 schools, where not all schools have mask requirements or physical distancing. They found low rates of school-associated transmission. Resumption of in-person education was not associated with proportional increases in COVID among school-age children. Higher rates among students were observed in districts without mandatory mask use policies, and those with a higher proportion of students attending in-person learning. These findings are opined to provide further evidence of the effectiveness of universal masking, especially when physical distancing cannot be achieved.
You have 20 seconds remaining.
And I'm done.
Can I ask a follow-up question, Artie?
that last statement that you read, was that Florida or was that nationwide?
Florida. So that was the end of the paragraph in this analysis from the CDC that was speaking to Florida K-12 schools. They have studies from other states also, but they all pretty much come to the same conclusion.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Do we have any more comments? I know this one. This is I don't need the comment card for her. This is Dr. Laura Jones. Thank you.
Hi, yeah, I'm Dr. Laura Jones. I grew up in LaBelle, and I'm a product of LaBelle High School, University of Florida, and I've been practicing here in Lewiston family medicine for the past 20 years. My youngest child is a 10th grader at Lewiston High School, and my older two children are recent graduates of Lewiston High School, so I'm here as a parent and as a doctor. I've spent the past 20 years caring for the healthcare needs of the residents of Hendry County. And as you know, we're in the midst of a COVID surge and our hospitals are severely strained. The numbers last week, there were 7 patients on a ventilator in our ER, when normally we're, I think, usually have 3 beds in the ICU, but most of the time we don't have anybody in the ICU. And according to the last week's testing results, our number of cases in Hendry County were up. The statewide trend was starting to go down, but Hendry County was up. Our positivity rate was, according to the dashboard I used for Florida COVID, was at 28%. And if you break down the numbers, 33% of those were in school, under 19, so children. And they just came out with a morbidity and mortality report for last week. And the rates of hospitalization in children have gone up over the summer from COVID. So I am here to urge the school system to help our entire community and protect the well-being of the children and their care by using the best strategies available, which are mask wearing, social distancing, improved ventilation in the schools, and vaccinations for those 12 years old and up. And I wouldn't be a good family doctor if I didn't say I hope you all have been vaccinated. They're safe and they work. And as Mr. Williams said, every medical organization is recommending those strategies, from the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of the Family Physicians, and the CDC. So I hope you'll take that into consideration, and thank you for all you do on behalf of our kids.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Anyone else with public comment? Going once, going twice.
Madam Chair. Make a motion. Yes, I can.
You make a motion.
All right. Madam Chair, I'd like to recommend a 45-day mask mandate for the students and staff unless released by medical issues, and the mandate would begin on September 13th.
Have a motion, do you have a second?
Second?
Okay, so we got a motion and a second. We have any discussion?
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
If nobody's been paying attention to the news, Lee County is in financial difficulties with the state over this. I don't know that we really want to go down that road right now. The governor says no mask mandates. I'm not willing to risk our school's finances for that particular reason. I think our children, our staff are very worth their health. I mean, by everything we can do to protect them, but we can't educate them if we don't have the funding. So I think that's a very slippery slope, my opinion.
It's a difficult decision. I know when I took this job that they said, well, you could lose your stipend from the governor. Well, I didn't even know I was getting a stipend when I applied for this job. I worked for 35 years in this county as a school psychologist and as a counselor. I love this county. I love the kids in this county. I feel, in my own due diligence, the best decision for the safety and well-being of not only our children, but our community. A lot of our children might get a little sick, but when they go home, they're in a multi-generational family. So if they take that home and their grandmother or grandpa's at home and they get sick, was that the school's fault? No, these old people died. So, but they're dying of COVID, and we're sort of a focus point where we can spread it. Some of the bigger institutions, stores are now bringing masks back to protect their employees. You know what? And that's my feeling, that I think that the mask mandate for 45 days is not a long time. We did it for 180 days last year, and we didn't have any crises. We did, I saw on the news where in Lee County, I don't know if you saw in front of the courthouse in Lee County or the school board, there was a fight, some parents were fighting and pushing the doctor and stuff like that. So I looked at that, it was 45 parents in that group. They have 190,000 students in Lee County. That's not a very big percentage of people that were totally upset with the mask mandate. I think for 45 days, it's a reasonable thing. You know what? And if the doctors come back and say, hey, we're looking good, we can drop that. But it's sort of a stopping, a curve to stop it. Let's get it contained and let's get rid of the masks. Nobody was happier a year ago or in June when I took off my mask and thought we were done. But we're not done. People are still getting sick. And some people are dying. They have teachers die in Monroe County or Miami-Dade County. They're having police officers die in Lee County. It's not getting better, and here's an opportunity we have to address the welfare of the children. Thank you.
Mr. Samberdag, with all due respect, I hear everything you're saying, but as you're saying it, you have your mask off of your face because clearly you're having a hard time communicating that, and I think that that's an issue that we're seeing in our school. I'm not sure if you're aware, last Tuesday, the superintendent and I actually sat down in the hospital in a meeting with representatives of Florida Community Healthcare as well as Hendry Regional.
Right.
And so we asked some very pointed questions. And I mean, I know he loves when I speak for him, and I say that like sarcastically, but what we asked for out of that meeting was give me compelling quantitative data. And the first question I asked in that meeting is, do we have an issue with treating kids, or do we have an issue, are we inundated with testing? And the answer that I got unanimously was the testing. We were not presented any quantitative, it was very qualitative data there. But when you go and you look at, I have to have it quantitative because I can get super emotional, and I wanted to follow the numbers. And so when you're going and you're looking at our kids who are either positive or quarantined, it's a very small percentage of our school population. And when you are looking at even our positive staff, it's a very small percentage. It's actually smaller than I think what you're seeing in the greater community. And just the way that I'm looking at numbers, I mean, because this is a very emotional, political argument going both ways, but the numbers almost suggest that it's safer in the schools than it is, even among the adult population, than it is out in general society. And, you know, I watched college football this weekend. Whew, in Wisconsin, they were wild, but overwhelmingly what I saw were adults out there without masks. And, you know, and since this conversation's come up, I've put my observations on, and I talked to Dr. Jones, and I got on Jason Salimi's website and was grinding his data. And what I see, I mean, this is my personal opinion, but what I see going on in the general population is we have adults making choices. And then to go away and take away a child's choice when the data is not supporting that. The numbers are not supporting that. And I made the comment in the meeting, the pediatric numbers, like, we cannot be responsible for the entire healthcare situation. Like, if they need backup, I think that needs to come from the state or the feds. That doesn't need to be, but when we've got adults out there who are refusing to mask, we can't place that burden on children, particularly when, by our own actions, that it's challenging to express ourselves and communicate with masks on. And, this is a burden I don't think that solely lies on children's shoulders. And, in a statement I made in that last meeting is, I have a son who's like almost a savant historian. And so we talk about history and things constantly. And when you look history-wise, people mandating things, and whatever it may be, the Penelope of what could be mandated, typically aren't on the right side of history. And so that's my 2 cents about it.
Well, I appreciate your input there, but, we just had medical professionals speak to us. You seem to have different data than they do. The COVID count is much higher in Hendry County than you seem to profess. I'm not sure where you got your data. Do I listen to a school board member, or do I listen to the doctors that came in? That becomes my question. It's not difficult for me to make that.
I asked the doctors, give me the quantitative data.
I'm sorry, what did Dr. Jones just say?
Show me the numbers. That's what I asked for. I mean, we talked about, there was a lot of different things that we talked about, and we had, I think what we uncovered was like an informational breakdown between the school district and the healthcare community, and how, we are better able to provide layers of mitigating actions that fall short of what the Attorney General said would be, breaking the law. I mean, when, I mean, medically, there's no people that I respect more than these folks who are sitting in our office, or sitting in our audience here. But when the Attorney General, the head enforcer of laws in the state of Florida, says, this is what you're going to do, you got the same email.
I did.
I'm not trying to be on the wrong side of the law.
Mr. Brown had a comment that I would like to.
Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, we are in a terrible, terrible time. I have the unwanted task of burying people in COVID who have gotten it from someone and who brought it home to them. I don't like what the governor has demanded of us, but we must follow the rules that he has set by him being the governor. I don't have to agree, but because he has the executive power to do that, then we follow him. I am concerned. I really would like to hear what the superintendent's recommendation would be. I would like to see us as a board have more dialogue about it, and maybe some other things that we can do. If we are at odds about the mask thing, maybe we can work towards something that may be appeasing to all of us. I don't think tonight that we'd be able to make a decision like this without further talking about it, because there's good things on both sides of it. I just don't want nobody to lose a child behind us sitting here and debating, but I would like to see some more dialogue about this, and then we can make a proper decision. I second the motion is to get on the floor for discussion. But I just think that our next step is to hear from the superintendent what his recommendation would be for us as a board, and we can move forward, because there's good merit on both sides. And we do want to follow the law, and we do want to hear what professionals are saying. So we're in between two. So at this time, I'm going to yield the floor to the superintendent.
Thank you, Reverend Brown.
Okay. Thank you, Reverend Brown and board. And I do want to start off by saying I absolutely do not want to downplay the gravity of the situation. No matter what side of this you're on, we all know someone who is sick, has been sick, or we know someone who has lost loved ones. It's a horrific thing for any of us to have to go through. And so that is a very serious matter. So no matter what decision is made here, I want everybody to know that I know that everybody has the right intentions in heart. I do want to say I appreciate the medical community coming to us on 2 different occasions now and asking us to engage in this dialogue. Last week's meetings, we did have some very positive takeaways. We did have some very fruitful discussion and very robust discussion about things that the school system can do. And that date, we put them into motion. Data is important. And so one of the things that I do want to do is I want to share it. And RD, this is why I asked you the data that you shared showing the CDC actually showing that schools that had masks had far less cases or exactly how it was stated already. I can't remember, but the overall intent was that schools that wore masks had fewer cases than schools that do not mandate masks. So the only 2 districts that since school started that have the mask mandate has been Alachua and Broward County. Broward County is quite hard to follow because of their COVID dashboard. The way they do it is very wonky, and it was just very difficult to follow the numbers that they have. I have been following the Alachua County COVID cases, and theirs has been a little clearer, and I also reached out and spoke directly to their superintendent to verify that what I was looking at was correct. So out of 22,850 students in Alachua County, they have 348 active COVID cases today. That is 1.52% positive students within their school district. I know the number is 0. That's the goal, right? We all want 0. None of us like this. None of us want this. 0 is the goal. Mask mandate since the first day of school. They're a little urban, a little rural. They've got a little bit of mixture of both within Alachua County. Is 1.52% acceptable? Would that be a good marker? Would you agree, RD and Dr. Jones? Would you all agree that that's a mask mandated, and that's where they are? So that kind of becomes the standard. That kind of becomes where we ought to be, right? Henry County Schools has 7,250 students, and today, 74 active cases of COVID. It's 1.04% active COVID cases in Hendry County Schools today. So if you compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges, and the percentage of a mask-mandated school and one that's not, I really struggle with fighting this battle with going against what the governor has laid out that we shall follow, to where our percentages are already well below, almost 0.5% below a district that is already mandated. Some of the things that took away and that got reiterated here tonight was, why don't we use layered strategies? Why don't we do multiple things? And one of the things that I believe the medical community was pretty pleased with that we talked about was the strategies that we are currently using. We have electrostatic sprayers that spray on a minimum of once a day through our school buses and through our classrooms. If we have a suspected student or a sick student, it'll get even more throughout the day of the electrostatic spray. Most of our teachers, because I don't go through every classroom, but the ones that I've been talking to, the ones that I try to model for as I go through the school system, on top of the electrostatic sprayers, at the end of each class period, they have the sanitary wipes. And from where that student station is, the student takes the wipe and they hand wipe everything that's within hands and arms reach that they possibly could have touched within that class period. So on top of that, social distancing, we know, we hear, we read that, we know that that's very important. And we do the best job we can. But when you and we want our classes full, we want our schools full, when you do that, it does make social distancing very, very difficult to meet the standards of what CDC recommends. We are doing the best job we can with that. Our teachers are being very creative, thinking outside the box, moving desks, chairs, tables, and putting students in ways that they've never put them before. Mask, no doubt, I'm sure, I hear you. I've got no ability, like Mr. Semberdike said, I'm not a medical expert, but look at us. We believe in them or we wouldn't be wearing them sitting here tonight, right? However, I decided last week to go to, after our conversation especially, and so I went to schools and I watched schools take in. Very few to none of the children getting off of buses did not have a mask on. Nearly every single one. The ones that didn't, their mama forgot they gave it to them, and the principal handed them one as they walked into schools. When you walk into the schools, good lion's share of the students are wearing masks. Not all, it's not 100%. Not all the teachers are, but a good portion of the teachers are wearing the mask. We have helped our teachers kind of think about the strategies of creating space within the classroom. If you're an adult, you want to create that space. You want to make sure that you've got a said area in the front of the class that I work from. Part of the things that we teach teachers as a practice is to circulate through the class, walk, be present at the desk. We've told them this is an unprecedented time. If you need to keep space within that class to keep yourself safe, then you do that. And many of them are taking advantage of that. I have a hard time believing that our schools are the petri dish where COVID is manifesting and leaving from. Because of our sanitation, because of the practices that we are doing, I simply don't believe it. Even the CDC says the highest propensity for people to catch it is from inside the home out. I'm not going to sit here and say it's never a case transmitted through school, because I don't believe that, but I believe that the highest propensity is inside the home out and to the school, not the other way around. So, in recap, and if you want my recommendation, folks, we don't need to pick this fight. This is important. I don't downplay it. The only way that we can do this and meet the governor's mandate is we give an opt-out option. Lee County Schools did that, and they had around 15,000 or so, I believe, folks opt out. So then we have to collect enormous amounts of paperwork, and then we have to come up with discipline procedures if little Robert Egley refused to wear his mask a day. Now we've got referrals. Now we've got people going to the office and again missing class. I just don't believe that that layer is going to help our 1.04% positivity rate within Hendry County. I don't like it. I wish it was zero. Last week we did see a small uptick. It went up to 1.15 and 1.13. This week we're already seeing it come down a little bit. Alachua's already seeing theirs come down quite a bit as well. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know how long this is going to last. However, I'm telling you, take the money out of it, take the money aside. If they take all of our salaries out of it, push that aside. I believe that we are doing quite a bit of positive mitigation strategies. Oh, and the one thing I did forget was we offered COVID shot clinic last week in LaBelle and one this week in Clewiston. And so we're doing everything that's come before us that we are able to do, and we know that this is fluid. If things change, if there's other ideas that we can do to continue, then we'll absolutely do them. One of the medical experts said, why don't you incentivize the mask wearing? Allow them to decorate it, give them prizes. Absolutely. If that works and that can be done, that's a positive behavior thing that we can do to help the students wear them, to help adults wear them. I'm all about it. Mandating it is going to cost us major problems that we don't want to get into that fight on a local and a state level with parents and otherwise. So at this point in time, I struggle with supporting a motion that would mandate it until our state authorities relax their stance.
Could we, let me say this, can we not mandate but politely encourage?
And we have, and so I've sent out weekly basis. I've sent out the weekly encouragement, folks, and the day before we had our meeting last week, and Ms. Busham brought it up and read it to them because they think I'm lying to them. I send it out almost on a weekly basis. Folks, the best strategy we have, here's all the things we're doing. I highly recommend you wearing a mask, and I highly recommend you ask your students to wear one and provide them if they don't have them. And so we are doing those things.
Thank you, that's what
Yep, sure. We keep them on buses now. I think even the bus drivers have extra packs and so if a kid gets on the bus now the bus drivers have got the ability, would you like a mask, baby? And most of them, yes, please, and give them a mask.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for me?
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? All right, and I'm gonna add one more thing to discussion. So our current policy states that we have given the superintendent the authority, and this is a policy that we, I believe, voted on unanimously, but to give the superintendent the authority to make those decisions. So even if a vote, you get a 3-2 vote tonight or a 4-1 vote tonight, the policy, we could suggest strongly, but the policy in place that we all voted unanimous, maybe Mr. Sammernick wasn't here for that.
It was pre-election.
It was pre-election, okay. So it was a unanimous vote by the then sitting board to give that authority to the superintendent to make those decisions, being closer to the actual, for lack of better words, the action of what's going on the campuses. So I just want to reiterate that. So I'm going to call this to vote. All in favor of Mr. Sammernick's motion to mandate masks for 45 days, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. So we have the Mr. Sammernick's motion to mandate masks for 45 days fails to pass, and 4-1 with Sammernick voting nay. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do now is we are going to flip the item 4 and item 5 on the agenda. We are going to put the consent agenda first, because we have 2 items on there that would be budget amendments and the annual financial report that would come ahead of the budget hearing. So on the consent agenda, are there any items from board members who you would like to have moved to an action item? Okay, seeing no items to be pulled for action items. Superintendent, may I have your recommendation on the consent agenda?
Yes, Madam Chairman. Recommend approval of the consent agenda as written.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda passes unanimously. And now for the moment we've all been waiting for, the final hearing and adoption of the 2021 budget. Superintendent, do you have someone who would like to make a presentation prior to the hearing?
Yes, we do have a presentation tonight, and I would like to say that I appreciate the work that Ms. Cox has done. Ms. Cox has put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and time into the budget this year, and I think that you'll find it a much easier read than what you've had in the past, and much more explanatory. And then I think that as she goes through the presentation, it'll even bring greater understanding. And then if you have questions along the way, she's always willing to talk, discuss, and help educate all of us about the budget process. So with all that said, Ms. Cox.
Good evening, board members, superintendent, Ms. Shattuck. Mr. Swindle and I are really proud to present the fiscal year 22 budget to you tonight. Back on August 3rd, we had our tentative budget hearing. The numbers really have not changed much from then. I'm going to just share the budget book as part of the presentation, and I'll quickly go through it since a lot of that information has not changed. For our millages, we have a total millage rate of 5.801. That is a decrease in the total millage compared to fiscal year 21. However, due to a 13.5% in property tax values, our taxpayers will see an increase. On average, if the home is valued at $100,000, a taxpayer will see about a $69 increase on their property taxes. On this page, we have our budget summary. This is all funds. We have a total budget of $144.5 million. This is a significant increase compared to fiscal year 21. That's primarily due to our relationship with DAOF and the significant increase in their FTE, which has generated this funding. In the general fund alone, you can see that we have a beginning fund balance of just over $19 million. Most of that is respread through the budget. So for example, the restricted fund balance, those funds that are restricted for specific purposes such as SAI, Safe Schools, we rebudget those funds to use them for those specific purposes. We also have the assigned fund balance that you typically see, and that's kind of further into these pages, but that's just purchase orders that we've committed funds to at the end of the fiscal year that carried over. But when we look at the unassigned fund balance, which is our truly most flexible dollars and where we like to focus, that was over $14 million that carried forward. And as we discussed at the tentative budget hearing, we had $6 million of that set aside for DAOF. And what we anticipate will either go back to the state or paid to DAOF based on their FTE completions. So when we get to the bottom of this page, when we look at the general fund, ending fund balance of 8.5, that's slightly better than where we were as of the tentative budget, and we have managed to tuck away about an additional $200,000 of new revenue. However, we do know that this is a declining unassigned fund balance. We're really not in the spot where we want to be. We do have some strategies in place to help mitigate and get this fund balance back up through ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. We plan to recoup between $5 to $6 million that the general fund incurred last year. So we do plan to build the fund balance up back that way. But as of the way the budget sits right now, we have $8.5 million sitting in our unassigned fund balance. I won't go through too much detail with the other funds. They're pretty straightforward. We have a lot of special revenue coming in this year. This budget presents a slightly increased special revenue budget once we receive ESSER 2, and in fact, we actually received one of the 3 grants today. So that'll actually help us recoup some of that unassigned fund balance. And once we get the remaining in, we'll see the special revenue budget increase significantly. We have $10.4 million coming in through ESSER 2, about $22 to $23 million coming in from ESSER 3. So we'll see a significant increase in that piece of the budget. Our capital projects budget also saw a nice little increase thanks to the property tax value increases. And then, of course, we have our debt service. We have a large balloon payment on the QSAB certificate of participation that we had taken out. I believe that was back in about 15, 16 years ago. So that debt service will be expired after this year. And then we have our internal service budget, which is our dental fund, our self-insured dental fund. And as we've discussed before, we know this is another dwindling fund balance and an issue that we have to address. You can see between where we're beginning fund balance at $712,000 to where we anticipate being at the end of the year at $461,000. This is not a new trend. We have been utilizing about $250,000 of that fund balance each year. So that's a matter we'll have to address this year at some point to ensure that we can continue that. I won't go through the rest of the budget. There's a lot of detail in there. I hope you've taken the time to read it, but if you have any questions, I will take them.
I'd like to make a comment. Surprise, surprise. So as, I scoured through the budget and, I don't know, I've praised Ms. Cox so many times in her transparency. So as I was going through the budget and I would get into the breakdowns, I would have all these notes ready, and then time and time again, I would get to the notes section on it and be like, oh man, she answered every single question like within the notes on the budget. So you really, I was thinking like, this is going to be a 4-hour phone call, and it really wasn't. Like I didn't even have to make a phone call. It was good. She was on point. Explain the discrepancies and a lot of the shifting from fund to fund that was previously not correct from former CFO. So I just want to commend you on the work that you have done, not only on the budget, but also on the AFR. It was quite a spectacle last year over the AFR and the budget amendments. And I feel, while I'm not excited about the numbers, I am confident in the accuracy. And that is, like that's my professional love language. So, I mean, I really appreciate that and the work that you've done. It's very obvious, the work that has gone in here. So I
Thank
just
you,
want to
and I
commend
do
you on
want to
that.
extend that thank you to my staff because they have been putting in a lot of hours related to the budget and the AFR too. It's a monumental task, especially cleaning up some of the things that we had to this year. But they've been great, and not just on the finance side, the payroll staff who have been struggling with implementation of Skyward, I can't not mention them because they've all been working so hard, and I'm so thankful to have such a dedicated staff and people who've been in the department for years and have that history and institutional knowledge.
And thank you for saying that. And I do want to extend the same thank you that I expressed to Ms. Cox to the finance department because this is a big turnaround in a year, and not even a year. And so this is, it's just appreciated just to be able to have confidence in the documents, the financial documents that are in front of us. I don't think we've had that in a while. So thank you for your work.
Ms. Cox watched the video of last year's meeting and prepared speeches, and because she knew it was coming at her, so you can't let her off that easy.
I know, I was ready,
Yeah.
so are we sure there's nothing else?
Yeah, come on, dig in there.
Well, I thought that it could possibly be that way, and I was making all my notes, and then I'd get down to your notes, and I'd be like, oh, never mind.
I do.
Your notes were, it's a great summation, thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight a few points and make a few points, and then Ms. Cox, please don't let me stray away from the truth and make sure I don't misrepresent anything. So as we go through the year, and if you look at the budget with a projected ending fund balance of 8.5 million, that does represent a downward trend in the unassigned fund balance. That makes none of us happy. We know we don't like that. We don't like it as administrator of your school. We know you as a board and fiduciary, seats that you sit in, you also don't like that. There's a couple things about that I want to say, and some of them are going to sound exactly like my predecessor, and then there's some things that I need to add in there new. We're working on coming up with a historical trend, but historically, we never spend what we project. And so we never spend out, that money. And so even though we've got a budgeted fund balance of 8.5, even on a normal year, we don't expect for it to be that low. So we think that it'll be better than that no matter what, because we will not spend everything we have projected to spend, number one. Number two, I don't know if you picked up on specifically what Ms. Cox said. We had to spend last year because we weren't prepared. We had no funding. We had no way to mitigate the cost of what the COVID cost us between extra humans to do the cleaning, the custodians, the enormous expense we were spending in cleaning supplies, a lot of the mitigation we were doing with shields between desks, and that was very costly to the tune of several $1 million. And we expect to recoup that. Now, it's not in here and you don't see it because those chickens haven't hatched yet. So we expect it, we've requested it. The indicators is that we'll get it, but until it's there, we're not going to come back to you and say, well, we didn't want to put it there and then it not show up. But we hope to be able to come back to you within, hopefully a pretty short order and say, yes, even though it's that, now we can amend it or show you a better number there than what you're looking at today. And it's that low because of the unexpected expenses that no one, your former administration, myself, no one had any kind of heads up that it was coming with that. So although that number looks bad, I just want to reiterate that it's not really as bad as it looks once the dust settles. But nonetheless, we had to bring you the numbers, as Ms. Busen said, out of honesty and transparency. If we're looking at the money today, this is exactly what's there and what's not.
Predecessor handbook somewhere, we need to throw that thing out.
Notes, my notebook, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay, otherwise, I just wanted to make sure you all are aware of that and the expectation is that it'll hopefully get better shortly. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Okay, so at this time, we are going to open the final budget hearing. Our Chief Financial Officer, at this time, presents the rolled back rate, millage, and final budget. Is there any, have you presented all that? Okay. Is there any public comment on the millage, taxes, and final budget? Seeing no comment, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment period on the final budget. Superintendent, can I get your recommendation on the millage rate?
Absolutely. I recommend the adoption of the millage rate levy solution as follows. The taxing authority is the District School Board of Hendry County. The state rollback rate is 3.2969 mils. The local rollback rate is 2.0305 mils. The total rollback rate increase is 8.89%. I recommend the following millage levies. General operating millage levy, including prior year adjustment, at 3.553 mils. Basic discretionary millage levy for general operating at 0.748 mils. Basic discretionary millage levy for capital outlay of 1.5 mils. A total millage levy for the final budget of 5.801 mils.
All right, at this time, can I get a motion on?
Second.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion? I do want to say, I do have some discussion. When I look at the millage rates, and I know that the required local effort has actually decreased from 2021. And I hear what our superintendent is saying about what we can expect from grant money coming in. But what I have, what I'm looking at is what's on black and white in front of us now. The chickens that have hatched that is actually in front of us. I'm looking at, some of our discretionary millage for operating. I would have liked to see that where we're not asking our community for more money for as taxes go. And as the way that the proposed millage is, I just struggle with a tax increase, particularly because we're having a precarious economic forecast. So that's just my 2 cents. Is there any additional discussion? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, or any opposed, and that'll be a nay for me. And that would be the motion for the 2021-22 millage levy passes 4-1 with Busen nay. Okay. Superintendent, can I get a recommendation for the approval of the 2021 final budget?
Yes, I recommend approval of the 2021-22 final budget in the following amounts. Fund 1, General, $112,089,377. Fund 2, Debt Service of $3,544,161. Fund 3, Capital Projects of $7,839,501. Fund 4, Special Revenues, $20,003,801. And Fund 7, Internal Services, $1,079,945, for a total of $144,556,785.
All right, at this time, I would like to request a motion on the 2021-22 final budget.
So moved.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay. I too have some things I want to say about the budget as presented. And that is, you know, I appreciate what was said about the money that we anticipate going forward, but what I'm voting on is what's in front of us. And as I go through this budget and look around, you know, the one thing that immediately that caught my mind, was the dwindling unassigned fund balance. And, you know, for years, that has been something that we have, particularly Mr. Basquiat and I, have just tapped on and tapped on and tapped on. And, you know, there is a perception out there that, you know, we've been recipients of federal money. And I think, you know, just watching the legislature and their attitudes about things, I think that is an attitude that we are looking at, you know, also can expect from our legislature. And, you know, I just don't see a lot of signs of tightening our belts. And I'm concerned about a precarious economic forecast, particularly, you know, with the moratorium on evictions and foreclosures expiring. And then, you know, as you look at these budgets and then other financial documents, you know, I see a lot of evidence that individual sites may not be managing their budgets well. And certainly, you know, I have a hard time, you know, if I vote against a millage increase that creates this, the funds for this budget, it'd be a little hypocritical to vote in favor of the budget, particularly when we're going to be increasing taxes. And I don't know, you know, the outcomes that I saw on that screen today were, you know, just a little heart-wrenching. So that's just what I wanted to say on that. Is there any other discussion? Okay. All in favor of approving the 2021-22 final budget as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's nay, and the budget passes 4-1 with Busen voting nay. Now I'm going to have to ask for some forgiveness right now. I made a mistake on the consent agenda, and I did not, I marked it on one and I didn't mark it on the other, but in the bills, there is I need to abstain from a vote. Is there a way, can I walk that back, Molly? Yes. I forgot because the work trucks came in and I forgot that I was going to have to do a mileage approval, and I did not, so if I could just pull the bills out and ask for the superintendent's recommendation to approve all the bills minus the ones for reimbursement for Anthony Busen, as he is my relative and I will be abstaining from that vote. Can I have your recommendation?
Yes, the recommendation would be to approve the bills minus the reimbursement for the mileage for Anthony Busen.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in,
How are you related to Mr. Busen?
how am I related to Mr. Busen?
I think it said how long.
How long?
No, how are you?
Oh, how?
How are you related?
Oh, okay.
That lucky fellow gets to be my husband.
Okay.
So, yes, I know, right?
He's smiling nod, he's smiling nod, but you know.
Okay.
Not making that. Okay. All right. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. And then Superintendent, may I have a recommendation on the individual approval for the bills for the reimbursement of Anthony Busen?
Yes, I recommend your favorable consideration of approval of the mileage reimbursement for Anthony Busen.
Thank you. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second, thank you. Any discussion? And as I stated before, I'll be abstaining from this vote due to a conflict of interest. That is my relative and spouse. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0 with Busen abstaining. Okay. Thank you for humoring me. I'm sorry. You should know if I'm not pulling something from the consent agenda for an action item that I'm off kilter. So going back to our action items, we have a new personnel allocation request. Superintendent, what? Hearing. Oh man. Okay. Whew. I got myself all messed up. So we're going to open now a hearing for proposed policy revisions, policy 5121, which is a new policy, and policy 6550 as advertised. Superintendent, may I have your recommendation? At this time, is there anybody in the audience who wants to make public comment on the proposed policy revisions? Seeing no public comment, I'm going to close the hearing. And Superintendent, may I have your recommendation?
Yes, my recommendation would be to approve policy 5121 and policy 6550 as advertised.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Action item A, proposed policy revisions for policy 5121 and policy 6550 as advertised, passes unanimously. Action item B, new personnel allocation request. Superintendent, may I have your recommendation?
I recommend your approval of the new personnel allocation request as printed.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
All right, so for the last, it seems like several months now, we are continually adding new allocation requests. How many people have we hired? 15, 20? I mean, I think we're getting a little carried away.
I don't know a number, but I can help you understand this one just a little bit. And if not, Dr. Staley can fill in the gaps where I cannot. We have received a large number of students with special needs. And when you receive the students with special needs, it takes a lot more one-on-one interaction and activities and functions to carry out the days for those children. We don't know why we've received such a large number of them. We were told that it's because of the great school board that we have, that they want to be here. And so, but for whatever the reason, Reverend Brown got that down there.
Yep,
That's right.
I didn't want to flip my hair.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But for whatever the reason, they're here, and so it just takes extra humans to do it. And if an IEP or a 504 says they will have this, then they will have that. In this particular one, we're going to a telehealth professional provider, and then you have to, and so because they're so hard to come by, and you can't get that type of medical, now that all the medical people left, you can't get that type of medical professional here to do that. This is the only and the only availability that we have. But we have to have a person that's going to manage that, get the kids in the room, make sure the TV works. And so if it's in that 504 IEP that we have to provide that, we have to provide it. You don't want to be on the wrong side of not providing that as well. Trust me, I'm totally bought in to not adding more people just for the willy-nilly sake of adding them. And the ones we're bringing to you are the ones that are absolutely needed to cover the bodies and the humans that we have in class.
Yeah, I just think that it seems like every meeting we're adding 1, 2,
Yeah.
3 new employees. And,
Right.
Seeing how we just went through budget,
Yeah. Right.
we're going the wrong way, it's just kind of concerning, so.
Sure. Understood. When you run a business and do what we do, it costs money and then it takes people. So I get it, I'm with you, but it's necessary.
That was, thank you.
Yep, good question.
All right, is there any further discussion? So all in favor? Any opposed? And the new personnel allocation request passes unanimously. Moving to board member business, we have the redistricting discussion. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to add the legislative platform.
I've got it on there.
Okay, perfect. So you want to lead off on redistricting? You know something?
Sure. The main thing that we want to talk about for the redistricting piece of this, you guys have already agreed on the last board meeting to do the redistricting with regard to your districts that you represent for the voting populace of Hendry County. In order to do that, to align ourselves with the Hendry County Board of County Commissioners, we have to have 2 joint public hearings that both boards need to be present for. And so what they've requested, and we feel like will work best, is if we attend the November 9th BOCC meeting here in Clewiston, and they will, I believe they said they would accommodate us at the beginning of that meeting. Is that correct? Well, it doesn't matter, one way or the other. We'll ask them to accommodate us, and typically they would accommodate us at the beginning of that meeting because we need to be there to satisfy that piece of this, to be able to do that. And then they would attend our December 7th meeting in LaBelle. And so we just need to make sure that y'all are okay basically with approving us adding that as an advertised meeting November 9th. That's the only one that would be different for us.
The county will advertise.
The county will advertise it? Okay. The one in, we're not changing locations on any of ours, are we?
Yes.
The one that was in December, it would be in LaBelle.
Right.
The December 7th one, we're also asking you to change from a Clueston location to a LaBelle location so that we can have that public, joint public meeting on the east side of the county.
Ms. Collins, we're going to need a text message getting this all right.
Yeah, right, yeah.
We're agreed now, but we're going to need a heads up.
Go ahead and know now, as long as everybody knows.
I need to be babysitted.
So to recap, it would be adding a November meeting for you, for this board to attend a BOCC meeting November 9th here in Clueston, and then changing our December meeting to LaBelle for December 7th. That the BOCC will attend our meeting.
What time is our meetings?
5. Well, theirs is 5. I suspect ours will be at 5:30, normal time, right? Yeah.
It's not really changing ours.
And we can send out, we'll make sure we send, since it'll be a little bit odd schedule, we'll make sure we get plenty of reminders and for all of you.
All right. We can take action.
Yeah, you need.
We have to take action? All right, so do we have your recommendation on that?
A recommendation would be to approve the dates of the meetings for the joint public hearings and locations.
Okay, we have a recommendation of a motion.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion for the set dates passes unanimously. All right, legislative platform, take one and pass it down. So we have a legislative delegation meeting coming up Thursday?
Thursday.
Okay, and the superintendent will be presenting the district's legislative priorities. I wanted to offer this opportunity for any questions and comments or concerns about any of the items on, the top 5 items on the priorities.
Where are you presenting?
Sir?
LaBelle City Hall,
What time?
9 o'clock.
Thank you. The 9th.
And I'm sorry for the late notice. There was a little bit of a hiccup with them getting the information to me. And so therefore, I received it about middle of last week myself, and that's why we got this together late, got it to you as soon as we were in edit form. 9. Y'all want me to go through it? Y'all have it? Understand? Any questions?
I guess, is there any question, comment, or concern from anybody? No, I have some. And so, I guess my concern is item number 2, and that is the support of our statewide learning platform online, described as a robust online school that serves a growing student body of over 6,000 students and their diverse needs. So, one of the things I was concerned about when we got into a contractual relationship with the Digital Academy of Florida was that, you know, when we heard their sales pitch, I was thinking they are going to inflate our district data. And, you know, district's data, when we talk about site planners and people who are coming here to set up shop or businesses or communities, these are some of the crucial information they're looking in their decision-making process. And so the way I initially envisioned it, it was going to inflate those numbers because they were telling us how they were just knocking it out of the park. And then, you know, as we discovered in the presentation on our reading scores and math scores and everything, it's actually had the opposite effect. And so our district, I mean, that's like our school. We're not running it. We don't have really any control over that. the outcomes were not as anticipated. They were pretty brutal across the board. And so now that data belongs to us. And instead of inflating us and lifting us higher, it's really done the opposite. And, we were always very, proud of the steps that were taken for our graduation rates. And, what I'm seeing in this is it's going to be dropping our graduation rate. And I feel like the Digital Academy of Florida puts our budget in limbo. Because they don't, we get money whether the kids pass or fail. They get funding based on whether they complete. And so I don't know what the completion rate is, but it is
They get money based on what?
completion. Did the kids complete the program? Did they meet the criteria? And what is the completion rate? It's in the 70s, isn't it?
Well, they're in their infancy because of the way they add the grades, and so there's not a true completion rate percentage for them to share with us.
Well, it isn't like 100%. It's not even 90%. So our completion rate is anticipated to be challenging, and the ones who aren't completing, like in their upper secondary, they're going to count towards our dropout rate too. And this is like very stigmatizing data for a community and a county. And unless people, the site selectors are just really digging down into that, when they pull up that EDGE data, those statistics, that's what they're going to see. And I didn't think about it this way until I read, I'll tell you two things that got me going. One was there's been a discussion about masks, and we collapsed, everybody in Florida, all the school districts in Florida collapsed our local online learning platforms at the end of the year because our goal was to push all these kids back into brick and mortar. And there had been questions about, so what do you have if you have these medically needy children that you really do not want, medically compromised children, in these classrooms? And so I was reading in a publication, and it is a reputable education, Redefined Ed, but it was saying that Palm Beach County is telling those kids, the ESE kids, the high needs kids, to enroll in this academy. And so, I know that we have, they're going to give us allegedly give us another person, fund another person for the ESE department. But let me tell you, our ESE department is, they're paddling hard and fast as they can to keep their heads above water because, just like Mr. Swindle said, we're having an influx of kids. I think, more kids are probably being identified and diagnosed. And, I still stand with, I appreciate all kids, but I love Hendry County kids the most. And so I'm very concerned that, that's an issue for us. And then one of our House of Representative members who is like a ranking member in the education committees, he referred to the Digital Academy of Florida as that he said in an article that Hendry County is laundering FTE. If you look at it from that level, that is, he ain't wrong. And so, when I think that when we're formulating these plans, like we've got in our priority, I just can't justify carrying water and spending our district's political capital on, the outcomes haven't been great. I'm sure that the legislature is going to be intensely looking at this situation because this school also competes with the Florida Virtual Academy, virtual school. And so it's just my personal opinion that, if there was a vote on it, I don't think I would be carrying any kind of water for DAOF until they were able to prove themselves.
Can I add something?
Absolutely.
Add something to that? So I will say that Chairwoman Buston is not unwarranted in anything that she is sharing with you. Everything that she has shared with you has been the anxieties and frustrations that I've been dealing with since November 13th or whatever day I took office. It was a very strained relationship, to say the least, with DAOF. And a lot of what she said was me working through a lot of issues with them. I will say that through a lot of conversations, a lot of Zoom meetings, a lot of them coming here, a lot of us sharing information, a lot of Ms. Cox and her staff, you know, providing data for the numbers and situations that we have been in with them, has absolutely paid off. They were here 2 weeks ago last night. The CEO of the company came down and he said, you know, let's put it on the table. Let's work and nearly everything that was just brought up. You know, I put out there, and I put out there very sternly and very hard, you know, and they understood. And a lot of it they didn't realize. Florida is very unique in how we do our funding and how we do a lot of things. And in other states throughout the nation, they don't have to deal with a lot of that. They've never had to deal with an FEFP process and how that affects the school district. And so when they started understanding more along the lines of what really is happening with our funding, they were perfectly willing to work on that. I told them that there is a huge concern on our part for students if they are not having high quality education and then having completion rates, how that's going to look as a Hendry County school. They're completely willing to work with us to ensure that they are providing high quality education as well as interventions and the things that you would do on a school system. The conversation shifted to the point where they want to see us happy and working with them. They want to see a robust, high-quality online education curriculum platform. They want to provide layers of support to Dr. Staley and to Ms. Cox that we, at this point in time today, can't put there so that we don't work them to death and run them off from the extra work that they're doing. Hate to talk about the money, but I will say this. The money DAOF contributed this year was what was their contribution of just our 5% alone?
I don't know.
Yeah, it was north of $1 million though, right?
No, it was maybe 300,000 to 500,000. I mean, due to that, the way the state funded this year, not funding the second
Right.
semester, it was reduced.
Right. So we expect obviously their fund balance this year was a click better because of them, but when they get a full year of full FTE on us, it's going to make north of $1 million, maybe $2 million difference to your budget that you're just sitting there looking at. I hate to make it about money, but it is, like it or not. And at the end of the day, we as leaders have to own the fact that we're in bed with them, and we need to make the best of it. They've got a legislative ask on their end that dealing with that FTE that they feel confident they can pull off. That if they pull it off, it's going to make a $500,000 positive difference to our bottom line of our unassigned fund balance. So, is it a perfect world? It is not. Has it been caused a lot of anxiety and work and frustration and loose hair and gray hair? It has. But I do feel like today that we are in a better place. They are very willing to work with us to help us understand more and to shore up on their end where they need to. And I feel like that it is worthy of working with them to work, because we're in bed with them now. You know, we've got contractual agreements with them, and so I think that we would be remiss not to try to work with them and help us along the way. So that's why we put them on the list and have them on there. It is a fluid list. Even if we leave them today, there may be other things we can add. There may be things that as the session goes on we need to change. There may be things we need to add and take off. So I wanted to make sure that was clear as well. So I'm not telling you that this is the hard and fast way that we have to look at this. If as a group you want to see something different than this, that's fine. But I just wanted to put as a group of our leaders, as we sit down and look at it, this was a list that we put together that we felt like was the high needs priorities for Hendry District schools.
What is the length of our contract with them?
It's up in 2023. So we've got two or three more years.
And with them being willing to work with us, if we decide that, how willing are they to work? You know, I mean, if this is going to continue to cause us too much heartache, and we say, listen, you know, we've got to make some major changes, like you're out.
Right. That was a discussion. They know that.
Willing to do that and not go after us because of this contract and things like that?
We'll say that again now. If we cut them off now, you mean?
Correct.
Yeah.
Or in the near future.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're under contractual agreement to them until then, until that point in time. If you try to sever it before that, I would have to ask our attorney Shattuck to talk about the application. but I think that
How
would be
willing
good.
are they to work with us on that? Was there discussion
Oh,
with that?
So, I mean, again, once they had the realm of understanding of the impacts they were having, you know, when the correct leadership got into place and listened to us and worked with us, they started allowing the understanding to sink in, and they're allowing, again, they're wanting to add layers of help to our staff again, you know, for Ms. Cox and for Dr. Staley, because there's a lot of ESC 504 IEPs that come through them. It's bogging Dr. Staley down in her department because they have to verify that, and oftentimes it has to be corrected and redone that her staff's doing. And we shouldn't bear the brunt of that. And so they just said, no, well, you hire who you want, we'll pay for them. When we talked to them about the work Ms. Cox is doing, they said, no, your CFO should not be having to handle so much business on our end. She needs the help that we need to provide. So the short answer is everything that I took to them so far, they have said, we need to handle it, get who you need. When I talked about the graduation rate, they said, we've never thought about that from that angle before. You're right. We need to work to make sure that we're doing interventions, that we're following along that graduation line and getting those students through the line. So everything over the last 30 to 45 days has been, how can we make this better for both of us?
Have they given you a date on when they anticipate things turning around and what help they will provide to Ms. Cox and everybody? Have they given you some hard dates?
It's already happened.
It's already happened. Okay.
And are we able to, I just keep going back to the data and how stigmatizing it is. I mean, I was literally like in a sweat looking at what was on that. And you would think, this is us standing on our own platform like we had to do an emergency, like this is what they do. I'm expecting better outcomes than that. And, you know, I don't, you know, we made a contract, you know, but just carrying, you know, water for them and spending our political capital on, you know, that publicly traded company. And when we are having, you know, our own struggles within Hendry County, I mean, I just want to ensure, I know that we're contractually obligated, but I want to ensure that whatever supports they're pushing into Hendry County or they're giving, is it sufficient? You know, I don't think that, you know, one administration position in ESE is going to cover their 6,000 students. And so, I mean, I'm protective of, these are our people and they're looking for our kids and those are not our kids. And I'm, you know, I'm sorry if that hurts people's feelings, but that's the end of the day, and you know, Hendry County first. And so, and I just want to make sure that our staff is getting sufficient help from them where they aren't taking from our kids within, you know, our boundaries in order to service kids that don't even live here, or who are being pushed from other districts, high needs kids with typically not great outcomes. Into our data and further, you know, making us less appealing on paper.
Understood. It goes both ways. It goes both ways, by the way. If you look at our K readiness scores, we're like highest or second highest in the state. And people are calling us going, man, what'd y'all do? Well, it's because.
Like 71 or 77%, I can't
Right.
remember now.
Yeah, it's like blew it out of the chart, but it was because of their data was why it was that high. So it goes both ways.
All right, do we need to take action on that, or just public discussion?
I don't know that you need, as long as there's no major objections or anything. And again, I want to stress to you, this is fluid. So, you know, I could come back to you in 2 weeks or a month or 6 months or in March and go, hey, we need help, we need to change this or something like that. I don't know that this board has ever had a written formalized plan, and I just felt like it was important that we did.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Looks good.
Yeah, Mr. Sanchez actually was the creator of that design and how it's got on there. We felt like it was very simple, straight to the point, and easy to look at, and had all the information there you need.
All right, so we've come to the fun time of the meeting where we are going to do board member business by district. Reverend Brown, do you have anything?
No, ma'am. I just like to express my appreciation for Ms. Beverly Thompson. I've been sitting in this chair a long time, and she's been such a great help to me as a board member, get me out of trouble, out of the ditch and everything else. I want to publicly say I appreciate everything you've done. I'm going to miss you so much, but relax and have fun. All right, that's all I have.
Mr. Samurai?
Well, I have to concur. This is a sad day. It's the end of an era. There's nobody that knows more about the school board business than Beverly Thompson. I have brought some flowers from the board to her to be presented. You're going to be really missed. You come and get your flowers. That's it for me.
Well, Mr. Bascom, let's see you follow that.
Got a second that. Thanks, Mr. Samurai. Well, Ms. Thompson, you're going to be very, very much missed around here. Superintendent, I'm sure, is going to be in trouble for quite a while. Learning everything that she does that he doesn't even think about. We thank you for your time. I do have one other item. I'm going to stray a little bit. I know I asked about the energy savings of things that we've done. Where are we at with getting a updated report on those items?
And I will say that there were several board requests, and I beg forgiveness if you remember at a meeting here about a month or so ago. Beginning of school was just, a large monumental task this year. Since then, we've had our own staff members out with COVID. A lot of people that's on, the district leaders in front of you, their staff people are out. We've had people in schools that were out, and so these folks are going to cover schools, and so it has just been a heck of an arduous task this year, way above and beyond. So again, I'm full of excuses, but I've instructed these people that our first and foremost job is to get schools open running and make sure the children are served, and then we will service those. Now, I know that we are working on that. They're pulling information together with that, and they are working on that. And so we will get that information and data to you as soon as possible.
Very good. I just want to continue to bring it up. I'm not going to, badger you about it, but I am going to kind of.
It's on the list.
Until
Sure. It's on the list and we're working on it.
Kind of see where we're
Sure.
at. Thank you. That was it.
I'll just ditto what the three of them said, Mrs. Thompson. I'm not sad, I'm really happy. You're going to do great things, and I have your number and address, so we're good.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. I know Ms. Thompson probably wanted to pinch my head off more than one time. She's been just patient and amazing, and a staple of the district, a cornerstone for 37 years, and it is going to be hard to fill her shoes. But I wish you all the happiness and joy and everything good that you deserve in retirement, and if you ever want to come back, we're here. Also want to take this opportunity to welcome Mrs. Collins, who is going to be filling those gigantic shoes, and I don't think that she is going to have any problem making that transition. She's going to be, I think, a great asset to the district. So welcome. And I just have a couple of things that I wanted to bring up, that kind of circling back around on some discussion we had tonight about kids being out of school because of quarantine. And I've just gotten some feedback from parents, and I would like to challenge or task or beg or recommend or whatever we want to call it. We look into how we are servicing those kids that are out for quarantine. I know in the secondary, they may be able to get things like at my kid's school, if the teacher was quarantined, they were using Google Classrooms a lot. But I have gotten feedback that particularly like in the elementary school, they're not getting a whole lot of stuff to go home with them. And I know that we owe all kids a free and appropriate education. And, you know, just considering, you know, the standard of the missing 10% of a school year. You know, a lot of these kids could push up on that. And, you know, if, you know what it's like coming in after missing 10 days of work or being on vacation. I mean, just trying to catch up is astronomical. And particularly in these, you know, when we're on these pacing guides and we have, you know, we're building on previous information, I just beg of you to please look into making sure that when these kids come back from quarantine, that they've had enough, you know, maybe even just the take-home work or the classwork that their classroom is doing instead of like iReady tablets, so that they are not in just such a huge deficit in trying to move forward. And just, if we can just be very vigilant about that. And then I have a question about secondary level reading classes. And so I would assume, Mr. Sanchez, you can jump in this one, but I would assume that if you're taking a reading class in the high school, that would be kind of remedial in itself if you're still doing reading. And I want to know, to ensure that our kids who are in that position to be taking reading classes are getting classes that are taught by people who are reading endorsed or like reading certified. I got some information that may not be happening, and you know, this is our last week. We get these kids for 13 years if they stay in Hendry County, and we have really, I wanted to assure that before we release them into the world, into post-secondary, that these kids we're giving them, the third grade reading is where it's supposed to be at, but if they're in a remedial situation, that we're giving them, our best and most highly qualified reading teachers at that point before we push them out into the real world. So if you could just please look into that and see if that's happening.
Yep, absolutely.
And then that wraps it up for me. Do you have any?
I just want to publicly again state, as I did at last meeting, about I do appreciate Ms. Thompson and everything she's done for me as an incoming superintendent. The intrinsic knowledge and skills that she's been able to share and guide has been invaluable. And so I do appreciate it. I wish her well, sitting on her new porch and overlooking her new hills and things that she's going to be looking at, and absolutely looking forward to work on Ms. Collins and continuing the pace. So thank you both. That's all.
All right, thank you. So now we have come to the end of the meeting. If there is no further board member discussion, if you guys want me to talk some more, I can. I'm not getting a lot of warmth from the audience. All right, so do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. All right, meeting's adjourned.